Today I'll be talking to you about LGBTQ in China. This presentation was done by Jessica Baker, Courtney Craven, Caitlin Griffith, and Murphy Hockett. In China's ancient times, homosexuality was seen as a normal part of life. It is believed that several Chinese emperors had homosexual relationships along with their heterosexual relationships. Opposition was not established until the 19th and 20th centuries, mainly because of westernization during the end of the Qing dynasty. One of China's LGBTQ landmarks was the 1997 decriminalization of hooliganism, violent or rowdy behavior by young troublemakers. This was widely assumed to include homosexuality, although the law never explicitly states it. Contrary to what you may think, homosexuality in ancient China was not something to hide. Homosexual actions were considered as more of a sexual act and less of something to identify with. Most of the information on ancient homosexuality depicts the activities of the upper class, but it is assumed that the lower class had less acceptance for it. Men of the upper class especially had many options for a sexual partner, as they were allowed to sleep with members of the lower class no matter which gender. While it wasn't looked down upon necessarily, it was definitely secondary to heterosexuality, as two of the same gender cannot continue on the family name. Homosexuality was widespread and open in ancient China. It was accepted as a type of sexual act, as expressing love for a member of the same gender did not necessarily come with societal disapproval. Evidence of these attitudes are shown in ancient depictions of women together, as well as men together. Heterosexual marriage was important to society because it produced children to carry on the family name. So, women who were lesbian often adopted the traditions and roles of married women so that they fit with society. Next, we're going to discuss the attitudes towards the LGBTQ community across the world, and also how politics affect the attitudes as well. Research shows that students overwhelmingly support policies if they align with their preferred political party, liberal being more pro-LGBTQ and conservative being more anti-LGBTQ. The major difference between Western anti-LGBTQ and Chinese anti-LGBTQ ideas is the communist ideologies found deep within the social structure of the Chinese people. Western countries are more political and religiously based, but China is anti-LGBTQ not because of their religion or politics, but because of their traditional conservative nature. Their political system affects LGBTQ rights because, unlike a democracy or constitutional monarchy, the citizens cannot hold meetings or protest. They also cannot vote, unlike a democracy would. According to a survey taken by the German housing website Nestpick, China is the world's worst place to be gay. Although it is the 89th worst city to be LGBTQ, Shanghai does host an annual pride parade. There are also gay clubs that can be found throughout China, as inclusive means for homosexuals do exist. It's just the concern of acceptance from family members and the state that confine LGBTQ citizens to the comfort of their own home. China is making great progress in regards to sexuality. While only 20% of Chinese approve of homosexuality, the younger generations show more promise. According to the same survey done by Peking University, 35% of citizens born before 1970 would reject their child if they came out, but only 9% of citizens born after 1990 agreed. This is important when you think about the type of government found in China. While citizens can't vote directly for what they want, at least the new generation can make a difference in politics. With Western dominance thriving, China pushed for social reforms to keep up. The semi-colonial influence began to change the way the Chinese viewed sexuality. For the first time, homosexuality was considered a mental illness, compared to the relaxed ancient Chinese ideology, where the idea of mental health was new and was beginning to get explored. This period of progression was the most oppressive time period for homosexuals, bringing various forms of persecution where they were put into rehabilitation-like groups with the intention of fixing their lifestyle. These practices included shock therapy. This newfound issue of Western influences contrasted with the initial issues of homosexuality. Attitudes towards homosexuality have been as fluid as the changing society it exists in. Treatment of any group of minorities has been shown to be top-down, depending heavily on the leadership that has the most power. We see these trends throughout China's political history, beginning with ancient China and following patterns found in the significant Chinese eras, including the Great Leap Forward, the New Enlightenment, demalification, and the open door policy. In ancient China, attitudes towards homosexuality were heavily dependent on the emperor who was ruling. During the Great Leap Forward, there was a huge shift in attitude, regarding homosexuality as negative, bringing on extreme oppression. As the political conditions started to move forward towards the New Enlightenment and the open door policy, criticisms towards homosexuality started to lighten up and freedom of expression increased. By the 1980s, bisexuality began to become recognized and gay communities began development. Today, homosexuality is not persecuted, but is more so recognized, yet simultaneously ignored. The homosexual community still exists, but is distant from popular Chinese culture.